Good afternoon. My name is Tamara Lawson. I'm the Dean of St. Thomas University College of Law and the Chair of the Women in Legal Education section of the AALS. This is a moment for our section today, and I'm just thrilled to be able to lead this virtual luncheon. We're so sorry that we're not there together as we normally would gather, but we are just as thrilled to honor our honoree this year. The Ruth Bader Ginsburg Lifetime Achievement Award is one of the section's ways to honor important women in our profession. The purpose of this award is to honor an individual who has had a distinguished career in teaching, service, and scholarship for at least 20 years. The recipient should be someone who has impacted women, the legal community, the academy, and the issues that affect women through mentoring, writing, speaking, activism, and providing opportunities to others. Our honoree is much more than all of these things. I would be remiss not to mention the sadness that we all probably collectively feel not having Justice Ginsburg with us at this time when we are giving this award this year. She was the first recipient of this award in 2013. And since then, we've given that award to Catherine McKinnon, Herma Hill-Kay, Marina Angel, Martha Albertson Feynman, Tamar Frankel, Phoebe Haddon, Robin West, and now our distinguished honoree today. Without further ado, I'm going to pass the stage to one of our honoree's distinguished colleagues to begin to introduce her to the group. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dean Lawson. Good afternoon, everyone. It really is my pleasure and honor to say a few words about Kim Crenshaw as a predicate to her receiving this Lifetime Achievement Award. The truth of the matter is, I really don't have enough time to articulate all the ways in which Kim truly is outstanding, but I promise to do my very best in the limited time that I have. To begin, it's entirely fitting, it seems to me, that Kim Crenshaw coined and developed the concept of intersectionality, for she herself exists at the intersection of multiple forms of talent and multiple forms of accomplishment, which is to say, Kim's professional identity resides at the interstices of bold and creative scholarship, pedagogical innovations, legal acumen and vision, social movements intervention, public policy advocacy, executive leadership, think tanking, if you like, artistic expressions, public intellectualism, podcast producing, and I must add, cocktail making. Those of you who've had one of Kim's cocktails know precisely of what I speak. But seriously, the point I want to stress is that many of us would be happy, more than happy, to leave a mark in any one of the foregoing domains. Kim has left a mark in all of them, and those markings, impressive as they are, remain for Kim, it seems to me, unfinished business. My surmise is that all of you already have a sense of Kim's scholarship, so I'm not going to say an awful lot about that. But I do want to note that Kim's name underwrites not only intersectionality, but also the broader intellectual movement of critical race theory. Substantively, her scholarship has public purpose and is infused with an ethic of community and a spirit of collaborative knowledge production. It is a body of work that reflects the understanding that knowledge is power. Power she encourages us to wield responsibly, self-reflectively, and in the service of social justice. Moreover, and still staying with scholarship, Kim has an enviable publication record, whatever one's metric. Quantity, she's got that. Quality, she's got that too. Interdisciplinarity, she certainly has that. Books, articles, she's got those. Citation counts, there she is as well. And with respect to citation counts, it bears emphasizing that she's the most cited woman legal scholar in the history of the law. I should say it again, the most cited woman legal scholar in the history of law. And finally, if your metric is impact, she certainly has that too. She was named one of the 10 most important thinkers in the world by Prospect magazine in 2019. And Kim's scholarship is literally shaping intellectual thinking, legal reform initiatives, and political movements all over the world. But again, I'm not going to say anything about Kim's scholarship, which is kind of disingenuous of me to say because I kind of just did, nor am I going to say anything about the fact that Kim co-founded and is the executive director of one of the most exciting and innovative social justice think tanks in the country, the African American Policy Forum. It is, after all, the Policy Forum that launched the Say Her Name campaign, a project that has helped to create a more gender-inclusive approach to organizational efforts against police violence. It is, after all, the Policy Forum that launched Under the Blacklight, an online show that began as an effort to put into sharp relief the multiple intersectional failures of the way in which the COVID pandemic was being managed and the precarity that failure created in the lives of Black people and other people of color. And it is, after all, the Policy Forum that launched the Truth Be Told campaign, a bold and courageous effort to push back against the ways in which Trump's executive order attempted to silence anti-racist speech, particularly in the form of critical race theory. But again, I'm not going to say anything about the Policy Forum. Instead, I just want to say a few words, if you'll indulge me a little while longer, about Kim at home, by which I mean Kim at home at UCLA, though I should add that Kim has another institutional home, that is Columbia. The spoiler alert here is that Kim has played a crucial role shaping the admittedly work in progress anti-racist dimensions of both our intellectual identity as a school and our institutional culture as a school. It is no accident, it seems to me, that the only law school in the country with a joint degree in law and African American studies is a law school on whose faculty Kimberle Crenshaw sits. It is no accident, it seems to me, that the only law school in the country with a critical race studies program is a law school on whose faculty Kimberle Crenshaw sits. She helped to conceptualize and was a driving force behind the institutionalization of both curricular innovations. With respect to critical race studies program specifically, she developed early iteration of the courses that are now core offerings in the program. And I should pause and say that her early iterations of CRT laid the groundwork for CRT courses, not only in law schools in the United States, but in schools and institutions, again, across the globe. Moreover, she socialized our faculty to take CRT seriously, very seriously, and intellectual socialization that would create conditions of possibility for the rest of us to be hired on that faculty. To put that point another way, one of the reasons I could enter UCLA in 1997 as a CRT scholar, announcing myself as such, is precisely because Kimberle Crenshaw lived her institutional life, lived her intellectual life, lived her pedagogical life as a CRT scholar. In terms of teaching, Kim is absolutely revered. And it's a point that needs to be mentioned, particularly in this context, because in some ways people often draw a dichotomy between the teaching in the classroom and the teaching of scholarship. Kim views them as one as the same. She has twice been elected Professor of the Year. Students routinely praise her mastery of the subject, her commitment to student learning, her clarity, her brilliance, her brilliance, her brilliance, her great expectations, her inclusive pedagogy, and the seamless ways in which she blends doctrine, theory, and practice. The short of it is that Kim takes teaching and pedagogy very seriously, and our students are the better for it. There's so much more that I could say about Kim, but let me end by saying this. The events in our nation's capital yesterday make absolutely clear that we do not live in a world that Kim envisions. The events in our nation's capital yesterday make absolutely clear that Kim's intersectional insights are needed more than ever. Thank you for being a committed and dedicated teacher. Thank you for being a brilliant scholar. Thank you for your civil rights engagements. Thank you for being a profile in courage. Thank you for endeavoring to lift every voice. Thank you for being a friend, a mentor, and a sister in the multiple senses of that word. And thank you for presenting us with this opportunity to honor you and your work. Congratulations on receiving this award. You certainly deserve it. And I look forward to the next time in which we might share that cocktail together. Cheers, cheers, and cheers again.
Um, so thank you, Devin. It was beautiful. So I'm delighted to have this honor to introduce a little bit the incomparable Professor Kimberle Crenshaw, who is the 2021 Ruth Bader Ginsburg Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Since the award's inception, the ceremony has always come with some tears of joy, stories about the blood, sweat, and tears that its recipients have put into their work, their students, their schools, and their communities, and sometimes jokes about the crocodile tears of male colleagues who ever dare to disrespect one of the Ginsburg Lifetime Achievement Award recipients, or the women with whom these recipients were locked in arms in solidarity. But this year's ceremony, however, may also come with tears of sorrow, and not only because of the embarrassing, shameful resistance to democracy and the embarrassing display of racism we saw yesterday at the Capitol building, and the even more shameful silence and incitement that came from this country's leadership. Now, this year's ceremony also comes with tears of sorrow because it is the first year the award's namesake, the late, great Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, is not with us. On September 18th, 2020, we lost a giant, a warrior for gender equality, a woman who helped to open doors for all of us, regardless of sex, gender, and gender identity. And today we honor a person who is so well suited to receive the Ruth Bader Ginsburg Lifetime Achievement Award in the year following the justice's death, and in the day following one of the saddest days of our democracy in modern history. Today we honor another giant, a warrior for gender equality, racial equality, and all forms of intersectional equality, and a woman who not only helped to open doors for all of us, but who helped to show some of us that those very doors existed for us to walk through too, and who provided us with a language and theoretical framework that gave life to the strategy that undergirded the groundbreaking sex equality cases that Ginsburg once argued before the US Supreme Court. As many of you know, the strategy that Ginsburg used in her sex equality cases were not hers alone. Like so many of us, she stood on the shoulders of a woman who came before her, Pauli Murray, the African-American valedictorian of her class at Howard Law School, whose ideas not only laid the groundwork for the arguments that were ultimately used to overturn Plessy versus Ferguson, but also provided the core of the arguments made by Ginsburg to convince the Supreme Court that the Equal Protection Clause applies to women. In fact, Ginsburg credited Pauli Murray, who coined the term Jane Crow, for initially formulating this argument, and Ginsburg even listed her as a co-author on the brief she volunteered to write in the case of Reed versus Reed. A founder of critical race theory, Professor Crenshaw developed a framework for what is now a household term, now a term in Webster's dictionary since 2017, and now always a critical term in feminist scholarship, intersectionality. And it's fitting that Professor Crenshaw received this year's honor as her theory of intersectionality, which Justice Ginsburg embraced, deepened, it brought to life, and it gave greater substance and meaning to Pauli Murray's words about the indivisibility of her identity. Indeed, Professor Crenshaw has created a beautiful legacy of bringing women, trans women, people of all genders and gender identities, and differing backgrounds and perspectives together to keep pushing us closer to the recognition of our full selves and to true equality. The contribution of the theory of intersectionality alone would merit this award, plus a gazillion others, and she's basically won a gazillion others. But Professor Crenshaw's impact is so much broader and deeper. Few professors, few people, in fact, could claim the kind of impact that she's had on our society. Famously, Justice Ginsburg proclaimed, quote, "Fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you." And Professor Crenshaw has clearly written the book on how to fight for justice in ways that draw on others to join you. Professor Crenshaw is not only a leading expert in civil rights law, she's led generations of scholars and students to join her in a scholarly movement called critical race theory, of which she's a founder. She is the founding coordinator of the Critical Race Theory Workshop, which recently celebrated its 30th anniversary. And I might add that she doesn't look like she could have been doing anything for 30 years. And Professor Crenshaw also brought her leadership all across the globe by giving lectures throughout the United States on 6 different continents. She's helped lead countries toward greater gender equality. For example, her work played a key role in the drafting of the Equality Clause of the South African Constitution, which is truly a beautiful document that recognizes so many important rights that are unacknowledged in our own Constitution. And as Professor Carbato has mentioned, she co-founded the African American Policy Forum. And that forum led to create the very impactful social movement that recognizes it's led us all to shout, chant, to tweet, hashtag say her name. And Professor Crenshaw drafted the background paper on race and gender discrimination for the United Nations World Conference on Racism. And as Professor Carbato said, I could go on and on and on for days, and I'll spare you the details because you can Google things. But one thing you can't Google is the great personal impact that she's had on the lives of so many individuals, particularly women of color, and particularly Black women in the academy. In fact, I can say that she's had a huge impact on me. Her encouraging and kind words one day when I was just a law student are one of the reasons why I'm in the legal academy today. And 40 faculty, mostly women, submitted nominations for Professor Crenshaw to receive the Ruth Bader Ginsburg Lifetime Achievement Award, with each discussing her broad impact on society, as well as her personal impact on their lives and the lives of other women. And great thanks goes to nine people who collaborated to rallied people to submit nominations for Professor Crenshaw: Deans Michelle Alexander, Danielle Conway, Tamara Lawson, Kim Mutcherson, Carla Pratt, Song Richardson, and Elizabeth Cronk Warner, and Professor Melissa Murray, and Professor Devin Carbato. I'm honored to share a few of these words from the nominations and others, and I start first with Professor Crenshaw's dean from Columbia Law School, Jillian Lester, who wrote, quote, Professor Crenshaw always seeks to bring others into the fold of her scholarly and advocacy community. She teaches and mentors countless students each year, many of whom marvel at the opportunity to literally get to learn from the person who created the theory. And our students are not alone. Professor Crenshaw's highly accessible and yet rigorously intelligent way of illuminating issues of race, gender, and justice attracts frequent invitations to speak at national and international events. And as a media expert, I can think of no person who better meets the criteria for this distinguished award. Professor Catherine McKinnon, the 2014 recipient of this award, wrote, Kim's tireless work on intersectionality has transformed legal academia, both on race and on sex, by deepening and extending equality theorizing in crucial and unprecedented ways. Her elegant, brilliant, and path-breaking scholarship over the past 30 years is unparalleled. Her activism has had a major impact on public consciousness and responsiveness to discrimination against African-American women in particular, including by focusing the murder of Black women by police long before any other organization or person did so, and lifting up their mothers. Her teaching has been fundamental to generations of students. No one in our profession deserves this award more. No one, in my opinion, comes even close. The RBG Award itself would be honored by her selection as its recipient. Professor Melissa Murray of NYU School of Law noted how Professor Crenshaw has literally changed the conversation. She said, quote, presidential hopeful Kirsten Gillibrand has tweeted, the future is female and intersectional, while conservative pundit Ben Shapiro wonders aloud whether intersectionality is the biggest problem in America. Regardless of where one falls on the political spectrum, one cannot deny the way in which Professor Crenshaw has changed the nature of the debate, demanding that law recognize and reckon with various forms of identity. Professor Shakira Sanders of University of Idaho College of Law, to put it simply, kept it real. She proclaimed, I do not know Professor Crenshaw personally, but I do know that no other living legal academic is a pioneering scholar and writer on civil rights and critical race theory, is a pioneering a scholar on civil rights and critical race theory. Professor Crenshaw's influence expands far beyond law, more so than any living legal academic in the United States. Whether she knows it or not, Professor Crenshaw's theory of intersectionality, which is dope, validates every woman of color on the globe. This theory now validates every queer person. In my opinion, Professor Crenshaw represents the 1% of legal academia. This award is beyond well earned and long overdue. And then there were words from Professor Crenshaw's former students like Dean Kimberle Mutcherson of Rutgers Law School. Dean Mutcherson declared, "I first became familiar with Kim Crenshaw when I was her student at Columbia Law School over 20 years ago. At the time, as a Black woman with no thought of aspiring to the academia, I was transfixed by her intellect, her ability to speak the language of academia in a way that was accessible and powerful, and her commitment to using her power, her position to advance the causes about which she cared deeply, especially the liberation and protection of Black women. I learned the term intersectionality from her, and it literally gave me language to think about the complexities of my life and lived experience in more sophisticated ways. She was a remarkable example of what a life in the legal academy could look like for someone for whom being in the ivory tower was convenient and useful, but for whom the elite nature of her law school position did not sway her from doing work that was grounded in grassroots. I'm now 20 years into a career as a legal academic and 1.5 years into the role of dean of a law school. The example that Kim Crenshaw set for me remains relevant to the work that I do every day. She has literally taught an entire generation of feminists that we must refuse to engage in scholarly work or movements that demand that Black women flatten or ignore our experiences in order to placate others. She says, the influence that Kim Crenshaw has had on nationally and internationally is difficult, if not, I thought it was great, if not impossible to measure. She starts conversations, shapes conversations, educates, advocates, and inspires, and has been doing so for decades. I still talk about conversations from the classes I had with her when I was a law student, and following her work and eventually following in her footsteps as a legal academic has been possible largely because of the powerful example that she set for me. Berkeley Law professor Kiara Bridges, also a former student, asserted, Kim Crenshaw has given us a vocabulary that not only describes Black women's experiences in the law, but Black women's experiences in the world. When I first encountered Professor Crenshaw's work as a 2L in law school, I felt seen, I felt recognized, and I felt empowered to insist upon my visibility and visibility of others who exist at the intersections. Professor Trina Jones wrote beautifully, when I first read Kim Crenshaw's work in my second year of law school, I exhaled. I could finally see me in the law. Professor Crenshaw sees intersections among race and gender, among systems and people. Most importantly, she sees people, especially those whom society too often renders invisible. Not only does she see them, but she listens. She joins hands with them as equal partners in shared struggle. Therein lies true power, true leadership, true brilliance. That is why I cite her in everything I write and every single time I speak. It is why in these turbulent, hateful times, I still turn to Kim Crenshaw when I need guidance, when I need insight, when I need encouragement, when I need simply to exhale. Just like Professor Jones, there are so many women law professors, particularly women of color, who found themselves finally exhaling when Professor Crenshaw was announced as this year's Ginsburg Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Like Professor Crenshaw's work, this decision made us feel seen, and it communicated that work deeply rooted in both theory and praxis is not only seen, but deeply valued. And Professor Mari Matsuda of the University of Hawaii School of Law, who taught us all to look to the bottom, meaning adopt the perspective of those who have seen and felt the falsity of law's liberal promise, captured best why Professor Crenshaw is so deserving of this honor that she's receiving today. She wrote, from her work organizing the Harvard Third World Coalition to running critical race theory summer camps to weekly information gatherings and sharing through the African American policy forums under the Black Light series, Professor Crenshaw has pushed other scholars forward, challenging their ideas and creating a platform for them. I know my own work and career would not have succeeded without this kind of intellectual community. In addition to this contribution to the lives of women scholars, Professor Crenshaw is working endlessly to save the actual lives of Black women. The Say Her Name movement has become a part of the democratic conversation and will result in changes that will save women's lives. Like Justice Ginsburg, Professor Crenshaw will look back at the end of her career and be able to say, women's bodies are safer, women's lives are better, women are taken seriously because of the work I did. And no truer words could be spoken. Congratulations, Kim, on this very well-deserved honor.
Thank you, Professor Devin Carbato and Dean Onwachi Willig. On behalf, we have the real award. I know we're so virtual and it's hard to convey the warmth we feel from the women in legal education, but on the behalf of the entire section and the executive committee that overwhelmingly voted for you to have this award today, I award you, Kimberle Crenshaw, the Ruth Bader Ginsburg Lifetime Achievement Award 2021. I leave it to the floor for your comments. Thank you so much for being who you are.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. As you can guess, I don't usually find myself speechless, and I thought I'd prepared for this moment. But who can prepare for something like this? This is such a special honor, not only to receive the Ruth Bader Ginsburg Award, but to be ushered into this company by Dean Lawson, Dean Onwachi Willig, and my dear friend, my brother, my colleague, Devin Carbato. So I can't really capture the torrent of emotions that I'm feeling right this moment. I mean, let's think about what's happening right now. For me to be in this moment, to be honored with this Ruth Bader Ginsburg Award, especially at a time like this that demands that we attend to her legacy with renewed urgency. What can I say to be honored by my colleagues in this profession at this time when both intersectionality and critical race theory have been labeled as un-American by our government, as ungodly by the Baptist Convention, as a threat to Western civilization by intellectuals in Europe. And what can I say to have this career-defining recognition happen during the very week that Black women's contributions are making history across the nation? It really seems like I could be dreaming. And so let me share for a moment what it feels like by letting you in on a little known fact about me. I am an avid reader about how to wake up in your dreams, how to become a lucid dreamer. Because when you realize that you're dreaming, you can do like crazy things, like you can fly and you can talk to loved ones. You can work through that problem that you've been trying to wrap your head around for, weeks or months. And so one of the classic signals that you are actually dreaming is receiving something phenomenal that couldn't come at a better, more auspicious time, like being lifted up out of a near disaster just seconds before a crash, or being stranded alone on an island somewhere, starving and, rounding the corner. And there you see all of your friends having a big old party with enough food or drink for everyone. That's usually a cue that you're dreaming, because life is almost never that good. And so this is partly a cue that I could be dreaming, but let me give you another one. Sometimes things that are exceptionally bad are a cue that you're dreaming. So let's face it, if this were to happen in any year before 2016, let's say, you were the person that I woke up to and I turned around and said, you can't imagine what I just dreamt. It's like, okay, yesterday, Georgia turned blue. And the Senate turned blue, right? And then a mob of thousands broke into Congress, took selfies, replaced the flag, terrorized elected representatives, and then were asked politely to leave. And oh, by the way, the next day I received the Ruth Bader Ginsburg Award. You look at me and say, wow, there's some trouble, going on in your head. Let's try to figure out what that was all about. So I've done a couple of reality checks. I keep looking at the watch, and if it's saying the same time, it tells me that I'm not dreaming. So I know that there might be trouble in my head, but it's not because I'm dreaming. There's trouble outside of my head as well. So this leaves me with a question: how to sit with this moment. Someone tweeted yesterday, why don't we ever get a chance just to kick back and celebrate And, that was kind of how I felt yesterday. When I woke up, it felt like Christmas, right? And by 3:30, it felt like we were at the end of Reconstruction. What do I make of the fact that, at least on this one issue, Ted Cruz and I agree?
Yes, Professor Crenshaw, we lost a little bit after Ted Cruz, somewhere around there. We were with you until you said that. And we're hoping to get your audio back. And we know this is a surreal moment considering the award and everything that happened yesterday. We want to get your audio back to hear all your words. My mic?
Can Kim not hear us?
She may not have the chat open.
I don't think. We're not. Let me try and get her.
Earlier today, I had the wrong speakers chosen, or the wrong
We
microphone.
were thinking if you had headphones, that would give a different mic. No. Okay. Maybe she can talk on the phone through to your mic, Devin.
I'm trying to. Yeah, I'm trying to get her somehow. Look, can you let Kim know that we can't? Right,
Okay, cool. So I've turned off my Bluetooth. Can you hear me now? Okay. This is still part of the dream, right? So
is Kim getting an echo from everybody else? There are two Kims on the screen right now. So if someone could just mute either C Studio or AAPF exec, that'll be fixed.
Are we good? Okay. My apologies for all the technical problems. So I was expressing my gratitude to my aunt, Dorcas Parham, to all of my colleagues at two schools that allow me to be a part of that community for the last 26 years at UCLA and at Columbia. I'm grateful to my deans who've over the years who have been more than supportive in allowing one of their colleagues to have multiple affiliations, and to people who took a chance, people like Shirley Abramson, who really showed me what hard work and perseverance was like. Susan Prager and Carol Goldberg, I call them the dynamic duo who brought me to UCLA. And so many different villages that I guess I would call it that I've been part of. CLS that nurtured me from the very beginning. I had colleagues like, Duncan Kennedy and Rick Abel and Gary Peller, FemCrit groups, specifically in California, North and South California. We used to get together several times a year to provide intellectual space and support. So many read drafts of demarginalizing and mapping the margins. I wouldn't imagine what those articles could have been without that community. Catherine McKinnon, I get to call her Kitty because I've known her for a long time, who first invited me to present the talk that became Demarginalizing at the University of Chicago. And then folks from law school days who helped form early CRT, Mari Matsuda and Chuck Lawrence and Neil Gotanda and Stephanie Phillips, all part of the village out of which this work came. I often say that the articles were really transcripts of debates, of conversations, of trying to work things out. I'm not the type of person who can just write in my office into the ether. These were actual conversations, projects that we were engaging with. And there are new colleagues who have joined this effort to find new audiences for critical race theory and intersectionality. People like David and Nate and Priscilla and Tandy who are seeing these possibilities and helping me think about them. And last and not least, my colleagues at Critical Race Studies program at UCLA, including Devin, Cheryl, Laura, Jerry, the Promise Institute with Asla and Tendai, and my amazing team at AAPF, Luke, Sharmina, Emmett, and the members of our Social Justice Writers Workshop. These are all of the villages that I've called home, and they help nurture me. But as I'm speaking about home, I can't not mention my own home. My mother, Marion Williams, and my father, Walter Crenshaw, in big ways and small ways, they laid out this path. I was saying the other day that I don't know what I would have done with my life had it not been for two accidents of my birth. First, I was born Black and female at the cusp of two movements that were shaped to change the reality of what that meant. And second, I grew up in a household of race men and women in the 20th century. So my path feels like it was etched in stone. It was a unique shaping that they both provided. My mom was the griot of the family. She's the one that shared with me the stories of the pool that she integrated at 3 and the soda fountain that she integrated in her teens and the theater that she integrated, the band, the orchestra. So she was the one that helped me decode the racial terrain that I walked on. And the two of them at the dinner table, let's just say that my friends used to tease us by saying that we were the only family that they knew of that had to study for dinner, because we had to go to the table to talk about what we'd learned in the world, what we made of it. So I credit them for nurturing this critical reflection. And I credit them for not turning it off even when it came back at them. So it was my dad who really encouraged me to become a lawyer, and it wasn't intentional. So I was particularly keen to challenge things that felt like arbitrary rules. So for example, in the days before there were real remote controls in the household, that was usually the kids. So my father would call me from way upstairs to come downstairs to change the channel for him. And I would ask, well, why do I have to stop what I'm doing in my room to come downstairs to change the channel for you? Is my time not valued simply because I'm a kid, I'm a girl, or I'm the youngest person in the family? So he didn't let me win that argument, but he did stop calling me to come downstairs to change the channel. Conflict of laws and consequences of power downstream also played a big role in shaping me to be a lawyer. My first real case before the parental units was when I was about 9. My parents decided to send me and my brother to church, giving us money for the collection, and told me to follow my brother's instructions. My brother had a different idea. He decided that we should go to the store and spend the money on candy and cut church. I didn't think it was a good idea, but the parental units told me to follow his instructions. I did, of course. They decided at the last minute to go to church, finding us not there. The decision was made that we'd be punished. So the moment they walked into the door, punishment was nigh. And I decided to argue my case. This was a conflict of rules, a conflict of law, a conflict of authority. How could I be punished when there was no winning out for me? Either I didn't follow their edict to follow my brother's rules, or I did and I get in trouble. My father never fully admitted that I was right, but I did overhear him tell my mother that I was litigious and I was certainly destined to be a lawyer. So I think that experience of both encouraging critical thought and not tamping it down when it came back at them encouraged the career I led. And finally, you know what, my father died in his second year of law school and left me these books that I wanted to learn how to read. And that's what led me to law school. And so that's what it was. And I could tell you more, I certainly will, but I really want to just pivot and say one thing about Justice Ginsburg, Derek Bell, and Polly Murray, and think about what we are bequeathing to the next generation. So as is known, I went to Harvard to study with Derek Bell. I was initially introduced to him through Race, Racism, and American Law. When I got there, Bell was no more. He'd left, and the administration had no plans to really teach us courses. That didn't work out so well for us, and our activism around that eventually led to critical race theory. People like Bell and Ruth Bader Ginsburg, they both have parallel legacies for me and for many of us. They helped create frameworks that disrupted what had traditionally been seen as conventional. Justice Ginsburg challenged the legal facilitation of naturalized gender roles, and she reconstituted how we think about sex, its relationship to gender, and how law normalized it. It was revolutionary thinking at the time, and it also was not thinking that we were exposed to in law school. The great Polly Murray, a dear friend of Justice Ginsburg, she was central in laying the attack against both race and gender discrimination. She was not part of the law school curriculum. So the ideas of Bell, Murray, and Ginsburg, they are now part of legal thinking, but it took a fight for that to happen. And it makes a difference if these ideas are accessible or not. So what do we think about what's happening with this next generation? What do we think about the fact that right now there is an executive order that basically shapes and frames these ideas in ways that allow them to be repudiated, allow them not to be taught, allow them to be framed as un-American? I wondered for a long time what would happen when they came for us, when social justice thinkers and those who are pushing for a more egalitarian American society were going to come under attack. Would our institutions and would our allies and would civil society stand up for us? And if we're to measure what happened since September, this executive order came down, the outcome is not a good one. So when I cite Trump's attack on CRT and intersectionality and structural racism and implicit bias as severe threats to American justice and democracy, I'm often met with the question, why does this matter to anyone who isn't conducting diversity training or running a federally funded nonprofit? And it really makes me want to just pull my hair out. But to this question, I say that the equity gag order attacks every person who exercised their constitutional right to peacefully protest racial injustice this year. every person who was overcome with grief after watching 8 minutes and 46 seconds of George Floyd's death, every person who's been awakened to the nightmare of structural racism by the racially disproportionate death toll of the COVID crisis, every person who's been prompted to rethink American history, beginning with slavery that built the wealth of this nation, every person who's witnessed the undeniable patterns of implicit bias by well-meaning colleagues who under-evaluate, overtalk, or mansplain them, every person who wants to uncover the embedded inequalities across our institutions in order to interrupt them, and every woman of color or any other employee who wants to name the multiple forms of disadvantage that impacted them. Everyone who's experienced anything like this has an interest in resisting the effort to tap down, erase, and bury these critical challenges in our society. It should be clear that we can't treat the attack on ideas as any less significant than the attack on other material interests. Without access to ideas that promote equality rather than suffocate it, material inequalities become just life. So as I ponder now this legacy of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I want to end with just a story about meeting her and about how to grapple with the challenges that we face. And I'm gonna just read from a Facebook post, because I had the opportunity to meet her once at a dinner she hosted for my Columbia colleagues in 2014. We run into each other in the hallway, and our eyes are both downcast when we meet. I said who I was, and she said, "Oh, I know you," smiling, shaking my hand. "Yes, I've read your articles." I'm thinking, like, did she really say articles as in more than one? And is this a good thing? I'm wondering. Yes, it seems to be. She's still smiling while I'm searching for something to say. So at that point, I'm just done. Nothing remotely academic or legal came to my mind. I had that stupid teenager meets rock star kind of speechlessness going on, honored, incredulous, wishing I could say, "Could you repeat that for my mom?" I was feeling so silly. I couldn't really do anything but just stand there geeking at the moment. So I wish I could say that in the years since I've come to some conclusion about what I might have said to the notorious RBG at that dinner. I couldn't recall even the basic pointers on small talk, like picking up points of commonality or muddling through. I mean, we did have plenty in common. We both graduated from Cornell. We both matriculated to Harvard. We both found our way against the odds to joining the faculty at Columbia Law School. We both ended up at some time at the ACLU Women's Rights Project. To boot, I enjoyed swapping stories with my colleague Jane Ginsburg about growing up with path-breaking, hardworking, non-cooking mothers. And despite all of these openings, my glibness escaped me, even as I imagine it. Why? Well, I think the question is one that we're all facing in the presence of towering change agents like Justice Ginsburg. The question is, do we measure up? And in this current moment of reflection and activation, that's the question for all of us. The entire industry of social justice thinkers and academics and activists and advocates, all of us who have inherited the legacy of RBG and accomplices like Pauli Murray, do we measure up? Can we carry the weight of figuring out how to steer our society back from the brink to find a clear pathway to democracy that might have existed if the gender and race barriers that they faced had crumbled more completely? Justice Ginsburg's calls for justice are blunted often by a conservative majority, but they're excruciatingly true today. The challenges are so big that we might feel small by comparison. But even here, her modesty in setting forth her own epitaph is instructive. She said, "I want to be remembered as someone who used whatever talent she had to do her work, to do the very best of her ability, and to help repair tears in her society." This is a benchmark that we can all will ourselves to meet. So in these uncertain times, it's more important than ever that we realize the hopeful determination that she continuously pursued. I'm so honored to accept this award. And I feel that in fighting for transformative justice, we are all fighting for her legacy. We know she rests in power, and each of us in our own way are continuing her struggle. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Crenshaw, for those inspiring words, and congratulations again on this distinction of your lifetime achievement. And I just thank you on behalf of the section on women in legal education and all that you have imparted upon us as a community. Thank you.
Thank you.